Can't hear you, Nick.
Good evening, everybody. A very warm welcome to Kaizen Central. Terrific to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I know that there are still people on half-term leave and duties and that sort of thing, so I do appreciate all you're doing to be here. Thank you very much indeed also for the fantastic response to last week. I mean, it really was amazing, and so many of you got in touch, and I really do appreciate all that you had to say. I did send you the manifesto in the email, and that indeed, I'm going to load it up over the weekend, but even now I'm sort of toning bits down thanks to input I'm getting from various members. We want to shape this thing in the best possible way, and we're certainly going to do that and make it a mission that as many people as possible feel comfortable getting on board with. But that's not why we're here tonight. We're here to listen to David Savage tonight. There he is, top left. Please, as always, if you wouldn't mind using the raise your hand thing, it helps me enormously to be able to spot who needs to speak, and it's better than waving. David, a very warm welcome. I had the opportunity and pleasure to join David yesterday on a call where the discussion centered, as I said in the email, around employee engagement. How come employee engagement stats are so feeble in the manufacturing sector? I don't have the data. I'm taking David's word for this, but I know that employee engagement generally in the country is weak when it comes to aligning what's happening on the shop floor with what's happening in the boardroom and general mission. And the answer is to find a way and examine some of the best practices so that all of us, no matter which business we are, can get that proper alignment. David, I'm now beginning to stray into your presentation. You haven't got a presentation. I'm not asking you to do a whole thing, but do please set the scene for us and give us your overview and where you think the problem lies.
Yeah, I really don't worry. You're not going to be listening to me for the next hour, that's for sure. But it is really appreciate it, Nick, being asked to share some thoughts, and particularly thanks to looking at lots of faces, Stephen, Roy, different ones I can see around who've helped me so far with a survey on connecting engagement with productivity. And we know, we kind of have that sense that when we are more engaged personally, when our heart's more in the job, we are more productive. But I've been interviewing people, and I hope to interview more about that link. The discussion we had on Wednesday was with my friend there, Harvey Leach. Just say hi, Harvey, it's your first time. And we looked at this thing of ownership. It was like ownership is like, makes the difference between someone thinking outside the box and really going at a task, and them just doing what their job role specifies. It's a really important area. What the data, so 70% of statistics are made up on the spot. But the data about where we are manufacturing is in the engagement league tables comes from Gallup, their 2017 global survey. So it's not a UK statistic, but it does put production workers, manufacturing and construction at the bottom of the league table, with something like 67% of the workforce not actively engaged. So that means they're not psychologically engaged in what they're doing. So you could kind of loosely say that 10% are really buzzing, and kind of 60 to 80% are not buzzing anyway. And my mission, Nick shared his mission last week, which was really came from the heart. My mission is to really address that, because I think it is a fantastic sector, and a crime that when people are in that sector, then they are not, buzzing for it. They're not enjoying the job. They're not seeing possibilities. They're seeing, false ceilings above them. They're not embracing good technology. They're not feeling they're in the best job they possibly can be. So that's why I want to, that my mission is to work specifically there. And I personally use coaching as a technique to get into the kind of intrinsic motivation which we all have, which kind of can lie buried underneath lots of limiting beliefs and so on. So I don't know if can I just throw it over to you, Harvey? Can you just share a little bit of what came out of the conversation yesterday?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, David. So, I think I was reflecting back yesterday on sort of the evolution of manufacturing industry I've seen in this country since, say, the late 80s, early 90s, as particularly the sector I was in, which was automotive. Started learning from and trying to understand why Japanese industry was being more successful than UK. And I think a lot of what's happened since in lots of industries has been copying or trying to copy some of the tools and techniques the Japanese have used without actually changing the working culture and leadership styles. So, I think we were talking yesterday a little bit about, investing in people within organizations and changing the way management works to be leaders of people and developers of people. And maybe some of the barriers is that, because it seems that, certainly for the first 20-something years of trying to adopt lean, it's always seemed to me that it was all about the tools and techniques and very little in a lot of organizations about the people, and I think I was fortunate enough to be working within Rover Group at the time when we tried to wrestle with the people issue as well. And back to David's point, got introduced to the use of coaching as part of my leadership toolkit, if you like, very early in the mid-90s. And whatever we think about the history of Rover Group as an organization and the British Leyland legacy and all of that stuff, it was a great learning bed through working with the Japanese and then later under the BMW ownership that laid the foundations for a lot of what, has happened in the automotive industry in the UK since. So I think while there's a positive there, I think it is a much less common thing in terms of manufacturing culture to have changed the leadership style and to change the focus on developing and investing in people rather than technology.
Yeah, very good. So Nick, you want me to? Do you want to open up for comments, or do you want more?
Sorry, no, that's all right. I wasn't expecting an 8mm slideshow or film. No, listen. What I've been hearing, and the bit that stood out for me was what Harvey said about the fact that somebody came across a wonderful toy box of ideas, a toolkit from Toyota, and just told people to get on with it without necessarily working out what kind of human change would have to take place in order to make it effective. I guess I'd just ask people, does this sound like a story, a condition that rings true to their experience? Who else has had anything like that? Or perhaps you've had a different experience and would like to share that. So I'd throw the floor open. If you can, use the hand up thing. If not, just start talking. Angela, good evening.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I guess I've seen this quite a lot in that particularly production workers within manufacturing are looked on as very lowly people. They're not included or they're not made aware of the company's objectives. And I have heard so many times derogatory remarks made about production workers. And I would quite often say, listen, guys, if those guys weren't down on the factory floor making that item, you wouldn't have a job anyway. So to me, I've always considered them to be a really, really important part of the business. And so many times I've heard production workers say about there are rumours going around the factory, they don't know what's going on, they don't know what the future is. The management know, but they just don't share them. And I really think that we should value those production operatives particularly a lot more. In the offices, we do value the juniors, we value the receptionists, you know, and they have one-to-ones with their managers, but you just don't see that going on the factory floor.
That is such a depressing story that you've told, and a really horrible. John, perhaps you'd like to have some input into that, John Hardwick.
Thanks, Nick. Evening, everyone. I just want to sort of echo what Angela was saying, really, around kind of this historic view of the shop floor. And this is, I just think it's a UK cultural complaint, because in Germany, the manufacturing operatives there are really treated with respect. You know, if you say to someone across the dinner table, I'm an operator in an automotive or in an engineering firm, you are treated with respect for having managed to secure a job in that type of industry. And it just doesn't seem to be the same in the UK, which is a real shame, and probably the biggest barrier, I think, to trying to raise the view of manufacturing in the UK is just this whole cultural view of it being the dirty end of the economy. And we've just somehow got to change that attitude. I mean, just in terms of where I've spent most of my career, we did try and reverse that attitude. And one of the things that became a mantra within manufacturing in my organization was something called inverting the pyramid. And we actually took it to the point when we drew the organization chart, we didn't draw it with the CEO at the top. You know, it became cultural that we put the CEO at the bottom, and then the shop floor and the sales team, to be honest, the frontline workers on their front line, we put them at the top of the organization chart. And the whole thing was aiming to show that we were there to make life easier for those who are there adding the value. You know, the value added activity in lean terminology happens at the front line. And so we started drawing our organizational charts differently to say your job is to enable that value to be added. And it was beginning to have some impact, actually.
Yeah, that inverted, sorry. Oh, I am sorry. I'm not muted. Amazing. That inverted pyramid, the Timpson company, absolutely brilliant company, the key cutters and all of that. They have the inverted pyramid, and it works brilliantly. And how depressing, John, you mentioned that you feel it's a sort of UK cultural thing. But the fact is that, according to your anecdote and to Angela's, the managers inside the company were behaving like that. It wasn't even as if they valued what their own company was doing, if they were treating the people on the shop floor, regarding them so lowly. Graham Cooper, good evening to you. You've got some thoughts.
Good evening. 2 points. Just to come back on the one about the toolkit, I think it was Harvey who said it. I think the reason, and I say this as a manufacturing consultant, is consultants pick the easy path, and that is to avoid dealing with people problems. It's far easier to just teach a toolkit than it is to deal with people problems, because people problems are hard. So that was one point I wanted to make. The other point is the cultural thing. It cuts both ways, and there is a shop floor culture. And in the factory I used to run, the guys would talk as if everything's bad and wrong and everything, but they behaved completely differently. When we had visitors around, they were proud of where they worked and they liked to show people around. but you'd never hear them say that. And I used to sit down with operators after we'd done staff surveys, and they'd always write down, the management doesn't tell us anything. And for you to understand this story, you've got to understand I was the plant manager and Charles was the guy between me and the guys on the shop floor. So I used to say, these managers who don't tell you anything, do you mean me and Charles? He said, oh no, Graham, not you and Charles. We mean the managers. I said, well, who else is there? You know, so it was a cultural thing. They had this belief, managers don't tell us anything, even though demonstrably it wasn't necessarily true. So I think the cultural thing cuts both ways. But in behavioural terms, our operators were always proud of the site when we had visitors around. So the behaviour didn't gel. And I guess if they'd have filled in the Gallup poll, they'd have said, I don't like working here, even though they demonstrably did. That's me done.
That's a great story, Graham. Thank you very much. Ewan, you were next in line, and you have run big businesses, so as the top guys. So give us your experience.
Well, I was actually just really a question for David. I want to start with that, if I may. Just really, we know obviously who's at the bottom of the employee engagement league table. So who's at the top, and what do you think we can learn from them?
So managers, executives, and the owners of the business, they're at the top, as you'd expect. So generally, as it becomes more knowledge focused, so the engagement goes up. And I think that is quite telling, is that if you, like in the old days, you employ people with their hands, they are less engaged than when you're perhaps employing them more naturally for their heads. But that doesn't mean it needs to stay like that. And I think that's, I said this word of, if you can get everyone to think like an owner, then things start happening. And how will they get that? There's Alex Anderson, through you're familiar with the Engage for Success program, the movement.
I think, I'm just going to say, one of the interesting things, I think if you want to know what really goes on in a business, if you go down onto the shop floor, that's where you find out if a business is humming or that, is where it's all really happening. So, ironically, let's say the people who are in charge, in inverted commas, might think that they've got the answers and are feeling engaged because they know, where the levers are, so to speak. But, actually in terms of what the vibe is and how, let's say, the general workforce feel about what's going on and what they're worrying about, I think you could almost flip that on its head and say that the higher you are up in an organization, the more you are removed you are from actually what's going on.
I hear what you're saying, yeah.
Okay, that's a really good point. I'd like to get back in a minute to start talking about some of the things that David and Harvey and others can offer as ways to get around this. But I want to turn to Alison. Alison, you're in America. How does that work in Atlanta, in your company, and in manufacturing in the US generally? Is that lack of employee engagement typical?
Yes, in fact, I was just talking to somebody about this not too long ago, and the statistic that I was given as of May of last year. So if you think about it, a few months into the pandemic, the statistic was that 70% of manufacturing employees felt disengaged. And to me, that was pretty astronomical. But I think it really also depends on your definition of disengaged, right? I mean, if you interview an employee and say, how engaged are you? Okay, well, it depends. You catch them on a bad day, they're not engaged at all. You catch them on a good day or payday, that the tone might change. I think that there's a vital piece to employee buy-in and communication. And I think, David, to your point, when you said, talking about the communication, the knowledge that the employee has, that they feel that they're in the loop with what's going on, I think it's counterintuitive to some business owners. So some business owners in manufacturing may not feel that they need to open their books to shop employees. Why would I do that when they can walk away and steal one of my smaller accounts and now run it out of their basement, And I don't want somebody to do that. It's happened at Wintech. People have walked away and started their own company and taken a client or two with them. So there's this kind of fine line between getting the buy-in and getting the engagement and allowing the employee to walk away with too much information. And I really do think it's about the communication, it's about the buy-in.
Well, Alison, if I can ask you a question based on that story about people leaving your company and taking your client with you, et cetera, setting up in their own. Now, what did you do as a result of that? Did it make you more protective? Did you build the walls higher, or find ways to make the engagement more open so that actually they felt more prepared to stay?
So it was actually, and this happened before my time, happened about 15 years ago. And since then, we've gotten more involved in aerospace, and the barriers to entry in our kind of niche manufacturing industry is a little tougher. Chances of somebody on the shop floor out right now walking out with some sort of information or knowledge or contact info and setting up shop to be able to make, brackets for Lockheed Martin out of their basement, it's a little tougher to do than the commercial account or two that somebody picked up before. So I see it now as now more than ever, it's important to over communicate. We used to not put customer names on routers out on the shop floor, but as customer base has grown, it's important that an employee knows, okay, is this a bracket for Lockheed or a bracket for BAE? Because those people are going to require different things and different flow downs. So it's important that management convey that we trust the employee, and then they will pick up on it. They're not stupid. They see through stuff, and they will see that, okay, well, they're giving me the information I need to make this part. They're giving me the information I need to do my job, and therefore I'm going to do my job. There's one of the things that's really helped us as a small business. I have the luxury of being able to do this, but I wear the HR hat too. So every December, I call employees in one by one, and we go over their benefits, and we talk about, because we cover 100% of insurance for employees here at Wintech, the premiums. So we go over that, and we talk over, what that includes. And then if there's an open forum, and it's just the employee and me, and we just shoot the whatever and just kind of talk. And sometimes you learn things, and you start getting the feel for what the trends are. A couple of years ago when I did this, I learned that our current vacation policy stunk. And so we spent the next 6 months changing it. And little things like that, I think, help to create that sense of, okay, management's finally listening, or that kind of mentality.
Yeah, it sounds sort of obvious, but of course, when you're in the thick of it, when you're deep in the weeds, it's not always easy to see, to get that perspective. Thank you for that, Alison. Mark Amphlett.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, David, really, do you think that this kind of comes down to, especially on the British side of things, the respect that managers have for their staff? When you're employing someone on the national minimum wage to do the worst shift you can think of, do those managers actually respect those staff as individuals and as people? From my perspective, I used to run a small manufacturing company with 20 staff at one point. I would always make sure my time wasn't just spent being seen on the shop floor, but talking to these people. Yes, I'd also, like Alison said, do the appraisals, do the HR side of things. But me getting to know these people, getting to know what their drivers were, getting to know a bit about themselves as individuals and their families. From my personal experience for the small manufacturing company, I was then able to look at the people who could progress within the business, which wouldn't normally get seen. So there was one guy we employed, minimum wage, doing the worst job ever, repeating the same operation for 8 hours a day. He was ready to leave. He was going to quit. He was falling out with people. Took him to one side, nurtured him, find out what he wanted. And then we were able to progress him, promote him within the business, and get him to be a very well-respected member of the team. So I helped him earn respect from the other people there, as well as the managing director. So it goes back, David, the respect. I think that as managers and as leaders, we need to be less toxic and more people-focused. Would you agree to that?
Totally agree, Mark, and that is really, I'm really happy to hear that sort of story, because the truth is that this, a strong cohesion and all the rest of it comes from one by one conversations like that, and respect, believing more of people, that is what makes them perform better, and that's certainly through. I'm running a coaching workshop at the moment, and that is the kind of at the core of it is the person in front of you who you're coaching. Do you believe more from them? Do you actually see in front of you someone who has way more potential than they even know? And coming at it from that, people will rise to that challenge. They'll feel that confidence. And if you ask people, would you have gone further in your career or whatever if you were surrounded with people who believed in you more? And they all say yes. So
I guess you have to coach the directors, the more senior management. So there's a lot of them, as we know, that they're an engineer by trade. They accidentally fall into running a business, and sometimes their people skills aren't what they need to be. Exactly. So I guess a lot of your time is actually building those up to respect the team.
And it cuts both ways as well, because people very often underestimate what they're capable of as well. So they think they've hit a plateau now. I'm almost burnt out, and then they also treat everyone else in that way. So it does go both ways. You have to believe big things for your company, then you'll start believing bigger things for your reports.
I've had experience of members of the team who are really rubbish at their job. That they came to get a salary, a wage coming in, and they were rubbish at their job. They couldn't press a button on the machine and take a part out. They're that rubbish. Other members of the management team said, right, they've got to go. We've got to just get rid of them, palm them off. But using the skills and taking them to one side and understanding what they're good at and what they're not good at, reposition them within the company, and they can really excel at other jobs. But I don't know if it's our culture as British people here, but sometimes we're not very good at that. Sometimes we're just happy to bin them off, get rid of them. They're just a number gone, and get someone else in who's better. It's just one of those things, and it frustrates me like mad, because I'm a fond believer in finding the best out of people and developing those skills that they've got. Then they can become, as you've said, David, a really key part of that team.
Yeah.
Now, that's a great point, Mark. And managers who behave like that are actually costing the company money. It's much cheaper to try and find out if somebody can be encouraged into staying than having to recruit and go through the cost, the inevitable cost. I think it's 30%, 40%, whatever in year one. So that's just adding to the bill if you're not doing the job properly. And I used to live in the States, and call centers, there was a period when call centers, and I don't know if it's changed, Alison, but call centers were really, the job had become so commoditized that people would leave to go and join another call center for 50 cents an hour. I mean, it was so ridiculous. And no effort was made to persuade them, to train them to want to stay. And this just seems to me like economic, it's not suicide as such, but it's economic self-harm. Adam, good evening to you.
Evening. This is I find this a fascinating conversation, because I've been involved with a number of big change programs within billion turnover businesses, such as Doncaster's, Unipart, and all manner. The thing for me is, and I've got two presentations here that go back years for me, and so on the right-hand side here is one of my presentation, Coaching Behaviours and Expectations, Leadership. Help change leaders establish a clear direction and cause for the change. Strategic intent, develop a clear strategy. Effective group leaders, assessment and training. Generate support from stakeholders. Minimize resistance, understand threat and opportunities. Make a case for change, significant compelling threat or opportunity. Compelling vision, clear, realistic, inspiring. You then go on to the levels sort of like from that. So now we're getting down to the shop floor. We say create the mindset and behavior, change through effective communication, leadership and involvement, create literacy, help people understand the what, why, how, and what's in it for them, build capability through training, influence mindsets, gain acceptance and involvement. When we look back and we talk around Toyota, Toyota had the temple, and we had the drive for excellence at the top. We had Judoka and just-in-time manufacturers and the foundational elements below that. And then in the center was total employee involvement. Well, we changed that. When we looked at that, and I think it's people like the lean consultancy side of taking this on board, is the top now becomes what's our purpose? What problem are we trying to actually solve? What are we trying to achieve? The two pillars then becomes develop people is the first pillar. Process improvement. What work do I need to change to achieve that? So I've developed that people, and now I need to look at the process. How will we improve the work? What leadership behaviors do we need to apply to achieve that? What management system do we need to apply to manage that? What leadership behaviors will we show? Foundational element then turns to what mindset do I need to apply to achieve our goal? Growth, implementation, experimental. So, and these are going back years when I was doing this. So there's not one thing that will solve it. There's so much. We've got the training at mid-level. We've got leadership. We talk around about leadership. Go, look, see. Why have this thing called leadership standard work? It's a common thing. Go to the shop floor. Go, look, see. That's where the work's being done. Talk with the people. Have lunch with some of them on a regular basis. How are we doing? What's the feedback? Do you think we're doing okay? Use it. Town hall communication across the shifts. We used to do them on a quarterly basis, every single shift, night shift, day shift, evening, So it is all around those fundamental things. It's not one thing. You've got to do it all and set it up so it doesn't fail. That's my
Adam. No, that was brilliant. Thank you. I just want to say though that this sort of coming down from on high and talking to people in the office or on the shop floor or wherever, you've got to mean it, and they've got to feel A, that you are absorbing the information, and B, acting on it. I mean, we've all been in places, I have in the not too distant past, where it's, hello, mate, how are you getting on? Everything fine, terrific. And for a second or two, you feel engaged. And they say, what do you reckon? Can we do this? Can we do that? And they blindly ignore everything you say. And after a while, you just think, bloody hell, what was the point of that? So you've got to mean it. I mean, that really is the point. Richard and Lee, did you both have your hands up? Or please, yeah, okay. Richard, good evening to you.
Good evening. Last week was exciting. I watched it on YouTube. I was watching you, Nick. It was amazing to see that somebody's standing up for manufacturers. I thought I was on my own, screaming and shouting in the corner. Make UK seem to be wanting to make some noise. The IOD do. The FSB do. And it is trying to get that unity together. Like you say, it needs to be one big plank that we can hit everybody with. The other one was an update. Alison, absolutely incredible what's happened. I've now managed to get Greater Manchester Combined Authority, what's called their bridge, which is all 206 schools and colleges, to be now working with a very large organisation that are going to be doing your virtual work experience. They've realised, and this is the exciting part, they've realised that obviously they can get market research out of their exact customers to be able to then say, well, what would you think? That's what you're supposed to do. Ask your customers what you want. They've got this opportunity. So both of them are absolutely desperately wanting to talk to each other. So that is really going to happen. The fact that it's connected to the SDGs, I just thought that was genius. That really was. And I even proved that somebody who's doing biology and chemistry and physics and all the rest of it wants to be a nurse and comes and does a virtual experience of crystal doors. Well, guess what? Start researching and tell me that you need to put copper ions in and silver ions in and change the furniture. You've still got that presentation. It's about creativity, it's about analytics, it's about communication, and it's about confidence. And this gives all four of those within that virtual experience. And what makes it more impressive is instead of having to just do it in May, which is when they do the careers week, the students can almost do it all the year round because it's a pre-recording. And then when you submit it, they'll know who's not put any effort in, and they'll go, that's incredible, we need to get hold of that person. So the system, Alison, you've opened up probably the world, not just your company, because Greater Manchester jumped on it so quickly. I think it might roll out to the rest of this country as well, which is exciting. On the other side, Nick, manufacturers have to have a website that is presentable. If you go onto Lego seems to know how to do it. It's come and play with us. They do represent themselves as a place that everybody wants to work, where a lot of people have a website and it's just like, this is what we make and this is what we do. And it's our responsibility to be able to do something about it. It's the same with what you're saying here, is Crystal Doors is now submitted for B Corp. Patagonia got 154 points and is absolutely outstanding. They had Black Friday and gave all the money away to charity. Part of the B Corp is you either give 20% of your profits or 5% of your turnover to charity. It looks at your employees specifically. All my well, not all my employees, but 4 of the employees were interviewed by the B Corp consultants. And it is about how is this company, is it leadership or is it just a boss telling people what to do? When we took on our operations director, who's ex-Army, 25 years, eight tours, incredible. I thought I was going to get somebody who would beat everybody with a stick and make them work hard. And he did the exact opposite. He says, it'll take me at least 9 months to gain the trust. And he says, you've got to win the hearts and minds of every single employee. And he says, it doesn't matter what they want. He says, they know how to get their productivity up. It might be that I'll have to buy an extra drill and have 4 boxes that you trust them with, rather than having it all in the stores and saying, oh, you might take it home. He says, I've got to then understand every single individual of what makes them tick. And to the extent, he then said at Christmas time, is this Christmas just gone? He says, I've written everybody a Christmas card that you are going to give to everybody to thank them. And I was like, okay. And he says, you've got to remember exactly what this sentence is. I hope none of my employees watch this and know what the trick is. I gave them out, and it specifically said to every single employee, he'd picked out exactly what made them feel really, really good about themselves, of what they'd learned, what they've achieved, what they've done. And Richard had noticed that as the owner of the company. And it was only a couple of weeks ago, one of the employees, when I was sort of saying, can we move some furniture? It was this Tony Lloyd, the MP, that we gave him the furniture, and he's moved it to his new place. And I said, come on, you're the guy who knows how to do everything. You've got all the tools. He says, oh yeah, that Christmas card that you gave me. He says, my missus read it. And she was like shocked how much you were appreciated. It changed his relationship at home. It changed how his belief in his employment is, and it makes him feel 6 foot taller because he knows that he's got equity out the company. He's of an equal share. So myself as the director, I say that I'm a servant, that I've got to provide the environment for them to be their best, the tools for them to be their best, which is the best machines I can get hold of, and to give them the training, the skills to be their best. And that's how we get the productivity up. But where we are now is when I popped into the factory yesterday, is one of our employees worked till 9:30 at night. Normally we get 30, 40 orders a day. She'd done 97 orders. Another example is another guy is on holiday and the dust extractor, it doesn't stop, it just comes up with the orange light. Rang up and said, oh, there's a problem. I'll be there in 10 minutes. And the chain had popped off the motor. We're not getting 100% out of our workers. We're now getting the 130, the 160, the 200. What people expect, then they just do what they had to do. And like last night, he was saying 3 people came forward to him and said, do you want me to carry on doing the night shift? We've now got everybody believing they're the ones who own the company. They're the ones who've got that stake in the company. And that's one of the big differences, that what we're talking about here is, one is the leadership, but the harder one is, can you all, hand on heart, honestly say you can go in and those employees have 100% that they have that open conversation. And that's the hardest part. I haven't managed to achieve it in the 26 years, but my operations director 100% has. He's on their side.
Well, I have to say that when you said he came in from the army and that you thought, that he would sort of walk around with a big stick. Oddly enough, the army is fantastic at getting. I mean, you can't be in a firefight and not have everybody's back 150%, and they really do understand this stuff. Yeah, go for it, David. Sorry.
Just while Richard's on a roll, you also have an inspiring mission, Richard. You have a real vision, and what Adam took the purpose thing. Can you just share a little bit of that, because I think that is some magic there as well.
Yeah, the purpose of Crystal Doors, part of the B Corp is to be a force for good, which is why we do a lot of community work and we do a lot of charity work. And today, the Sanctuary Trust, the website's gone live. It cost me $3,000, but that's giving back to the homeless people. The purpose of Crystal Doors now is to be the most carbon neutral company possible. And initially, the employees in 2015 didn't get it. The tipping point was when I turned up in a Nissan. Now, last year, we won 6 awards, and we just seem to be on an absolutely massive roll for collecting all the awards. And today, I've given a talk with IEMA, and tomorrow morning, I've got another talk. It's Crystal Doors is being well renowned, which has made the employees feel really proud. But because the purpose is that the company has got that one focused goal, the more sales that we get, the employees are now happy, and the more profit we get, the money comes back to them. They know that it's not just a rich business owner who then siphons all the money off. I'm the third highest paid in the company. That's how you start making those changes, is to be as transparent as possible and say, look, it's for us. It's not for me. It's for us. It's the team. And that's where Chris, the operations director, is like you say, from the army. It's nothing about individuals and there's no barriers. It is us. And it's that collective together, we will survive and we will thrive.
Richard, I didn't say how brilliant it was, your opening news about the virtual intern thing. I'd really appreciate it if you could just drop me a note about that, because I'd like to make just a little bit of noise. Alison, you must be jumping up and down with excitement about that. I am so thrilled, and a great thank you to everybody, Angela, Adam, and of course yourself, Richard, who've been taking this on, and Ian Crossley, I think, is also there you are, Ian, also volunteered to get involved. This is absolutely bloody wonderful news. Okay, Adam, you've still got your hand up. Is it because you wanted to say something else, or? No. Okay, Niraj, you had your hand up.
I don't know. I was applauding what Richard was saying. So because it is.
That's what that hand means. Oh, the side hand is supposed to. Oh, okay.
But indeed, what it did make sense. I put it in the chat box that making your people involved and making them feel valued is indeed so key. And that is where we've seen a lot of initiatives. They don't succeed because you're not involving your people in the decision making, and you're taking those decisions in isolation and pushing them top down. That's the way things normally they don't work. And if you're involving your people, making them feel important, and involving them and respecting them, and then gaining their trust, that's how you are indeed becoming successful. And Richard, he's a great example for that. The way he's leading his company and the way he's articulating, it's really so. Kudos to that.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think I've explained this before. But before I got involved in covering manufacturing about 5 years ago, I used to do a radio show for a digital radio station called Share Radio, and it was called Shop Floor, and it was anything about work in the workplace. And that's partly why I have such a huge interest in this subject. And I kept bumping up against the same issue time and time again, that middle and, to a greater extent, junior managers never receive proper training. And the amount of money that went into training at every level was a pittance compared to what it should have been. And I just think that the investment potential of proper training is huge, because the negative impact of zero training, of course, is terrible. Who's got some experience of training, training managers and sort of getting that sort of holistic approach to training throughout a company? Who'd like to just mention their experience on that? Ian, good evening to you.
Good evening. I'm actually not going to give it from my experience, but I'm going to give it from the side of the Japanese company I used to work for. And this goes back to talking about cultures and how things change. And every year they used to employ sort of 10 to 12 fresh graduates who came into the company. And these guys were on an accelerated program to see if they could make it into the management structure and where they would end up. But the first year that they were in that company, they all had to work around the shop floor. So they had to actually go down, work on the shop floor, work alongside somebody, buddy up to them, and actually meet all the company challenges. So one of the things every morning was they used to have to lead singing the company song with their team. And these guys, when they came out at the end of it, they actually knew the people on the shop floor. So there were no barriers when they went down to talk to people or work on problems. And the other thing they were given was they all had to, at the end of that year, identify a project that was going to contribute to one of the targets that the company held. And each year they would specify 5 targets. And these guys and girls had to come up with something from what they'd experienced that would help the company. And I thought that was a really good way to start a management training program.
Thank you. Sarah, good evening to you. You've got your hand up. Sorry, the mute.
Oh, sorry, I was doing the classic of talking on mute. Apologies. Yeah, so before sort of moving into working in the manufacturing sector, I spent most of my time working in large corporates and telecoms companies. So I've sort of been through numbers of training programs, but I also saw so many people who have been good at a certain role and then they got promoted into being a manager, but actually hadn't really had any training, and they were good functionally but didn't really have the relevant sort of people skills and really suffered on that. But an interesting other experience I had when I worked for Vodafone for a short period of time is that anybody who joined Vodafone, I don't know if it's still the same now, it was a few years back, but they put everybody out to work a day in a Vodafone shop. And it was quite interesting. And the whole idea was that we could learn what some of those challenges and problems were at the ground level and then feed those back. But I know my experience in a Vodafone shop in Newbury, the comments and seeing the sort of pressure and strain that the staff were under. And I sort of said to them, so have you fed back some of these problems that you're sharing with me? And they said, we've done that time and time again, but nobody's sort of made any changes or any difference. And they just felt that they'd never been listened to, which is very sad.
Yeah, that goes to back what I was saying. You've got to mean it. It's got to be genuine. John, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks again, Nick. Yeah, just building on some of the comments that have been made, I wanted to pick up on one of the areas that I think is absolutely crucial, but also probably one of the areas where you could get some quick wins, and that is the first line leaders. Because if you draw your organization chart, for most companies over about 40 employees, half of your people report to those first line leaders. It's just the way the organization chart works. So if you focus in on building those people skills in your first line leaders, it will drive up your engagement across the whole population very quickly. And the other reason to do that is, guess what? Where do your middle managers come from? They come from good first line leaders, or outside, but looking to grow it internally. If you get them very early on in their careers, the first time they get line management responsibility, that's where they're really outside their comfort zone. They've been a very good machinist or whatever, and suddenly they've got to deal with these messy things called people. You invest in building their people skills at that point. You drive the culture in the business because you're getting to over half your employees that you're serious about it, and you're also developing good leaders for the future. So I think, just putting your first line leaders through some really good people development is absolutely key. And it's one of the things that we at the Alliance focus on a lot is developing those first line leaders. And a lot of our interventions are about building that competency.
That's really interesting, John. Mark.
Yeah, one thing I'm picking up on all the conversations here is that it sounds like this is hard work. Having to dictate to managers that they've got to go on the shop floor and they've got to interact with the staff. They've got to be near these dirty people that get paid a shit wage and all that sort of stuff. It sounds like it's really forced on them. But surely if you've got a real interest in developing the business, it's a desire to learn as much as you can about the entire corporation itself, no matter how big or small it is, because that is what will help you develop the staff and the business, increase profits, increase margins, and get this a place where all people want to work. I mean, David, is that something that you've seen as well, that it's like pushing water uphill sometimes, telling people what they've got to do? I mean, Sarah touched it there. To spend a day in the shop, I'd imagine that Sarah wants to spend lots of days in lots of shops to learn all about it, because that's a character, rather than being forced upon you. You've got to do this, and people resenting it. It just seems like it's, hard work.
Well, I agree. It's the hardest thing to change, because everyone's different. I think that's what makes it difficult, is that for one person, they need to know the high vision and where the company's going and all that sort of stuff. Another person really doesn't give a damn about that, but they're motivated by perhaps the actual craft they're working on. It's the Dan Pink thing. It's mastering welding or whatever process they're doing. That they really get a huge enjoyment out of that. They don't really care if you're making it for, to be exported to, the Dominican Republic or wherever. That doesn't really get them going. And that's where you're right, the leader needs to have that one-to-one good, strong relationship and find out what are those unique drivers for the individual. And that's hard work.
David,
You can't just you can't sheep dip people through the same program, because we're all different. Yeah.
What I've just heard you say is different from what you said yesterday about or maybe it was Harvey talking about, what are you doing? Are you chipping stones, or are you building a cathedral? Are you saying that the vision, the fact that I'm making a part, the fact that part goes into an airplane that helps people fly away on holiday, they're not interested in the big vision?
No. So what I'm saying is it to a lesser or greater extent, and that's just the way we're made. Some people, it is what they do. And I can tell you, people will do things for a good boss more than they'll do it for a good company. So they'll do it for you, whatever you say. If you've invested in them, if they know you've got their back, if you're the one who's supported their personal goals, they'll walk over hot coals for that boss. But if the CEO was to tell them, they're just going to play the game. They're going to look busy, but they're not really doing it for them. So it's a really it is an exciting area, and it's not going to make us feel very like we're pros at it. But I agree, if we're hungry, if we really want to be good at it, we have to master this relationship building stuff.
That's your tribe.
Yeah, so Niraj just said people work for people. Sorry, was that Adam? I cut you off, beg your pardon.
No, I was going to say that's your tribe from that point of view. The other side I was going to say to you, from my experience, I've worked for some fantastic companies. I've worked for some shit companies as well. One of the things that I can honestly say made a difference that we used to do within the businesses I went into was we tend to have a skills matrix. And when we talk skills matrix, we talk shop floor. Now, skills matrix is at every level of the business. So as you escalate up into the different levels, we end up getting softer skills, core skills, different skills. Each one of those has to be measured, because at a shop floor level, we want, for every process that we operate, at least 3 people fully conversant in it, because that is to cover absenteeism and holidays alone. So we need to understand who are fully conversant within the process. God, same within sales, same within purchasing, same everywhere else, because people go on holiday and people are absent. So they need to cover. So the skill set, the skill sort of like exercise around that, understanding the skills around that is absolutely crucial. But then comes in the core leadership skills within that as well. And we monitor that to say, right, where's our succession planning? What's our talent management going to be like as we grow or as we change things about? So again, it is a big task, but it is a task that is absolutely critical to be excellent, have an excellence within the company and the organisation.
Lee, I couldn't work out whether you were summoning the sommelier or asking to ask a question.
Thanks very much. As ever, fantastic evening. Absolutely bloody loving this. Brilliant. every single person that's mentioned something today have all mentioned a little golden nugget. And at the end of the day, excuse me a moment, my wife just nearly dropped the dinner everywhere. When a small company, if you can imagine, we always talk about can't see in the woods for the trees. So a small company has a single MD and he sows a little seed, and then he gets his first employee, then his second, then his next machine. They then grow into another tree. They then grow into another tree, and it slowly grows and evolves. So in the end, you come to having a forest, and you can see the trees in each forest, but unfortunately, you can't see between the trees and what's going on. And then within larger organization, you have an Amazonian type style with so many tiers, and it becomes very complex. But the bottom line is people respect people, and it's all about trust and trust. And I've managed to build respect from our team because I don't ask any of our members to do anything that I wouldn't do. They've all seen me pick a mop and a bucket up. They've all seen me pick a broom up. They've all seen me jump in the car and drive God knows how far to deliver something at the drop of a hat. And it's all about that element of trust and who's got your back. And the problem that we've had as a growing company with more acorns and more trees is that all of a sudden this tree feels isolated, but you've relied on that tree to look after his little acorns. But he's grown up. He hasn't been trained, like Sarah was mentioned, to be a manager. They've got the core skills that we value, and they've got the right attitude, but they don't have the competence in terms of being trained to provide that. So we developed our areas into cells, and we've got cell leaders, but they've got no leadership training whatsoever. So, and my biggest culprit was the leadership ourselves of not recognizing that, because we're all too busy spinning plates, doing too many things. The workforce has evolved, but the management team hasn't. So we're all trying to do more than we really should be, and we're not becoming effective. And I'll go back to I can't remember, I beg your pardon, whose comment it was. It's all about efficiency as well. So we have latest technology, we have willing and able people, but we're not effective. So instead of being at 85, 95% operating efficiency on our equipment, I'd be bloody lucky if we're at 50. So rather than us investing now in more technology to grow, because our service is in demand for our quality and where we are, making complex, sexy parts. And our guys, going back again to David's point about making a part that goes on a McLaren car, making a part that goes on to the latest Tempest jet fighter programs, whatever it might be, it's sexy because we're in engineering and our guys are geeks. We're nerds. We are, because we love things, all mechanical, flying and technology. We all love it. And it's all about nurturing those gaps and bringing out the best of our cell leaders. And our next capital investment is training, because we've finally woke up and convinced my boss that that's what we need to take the next step to where we need to be.
Well, I think that's a really encouraging anecdote to end on. Unless Adam, you've got the hand up. Is that still up because of last time, or have you got something else to say? You're done. You're done. It's gone.
Yeah, I keep forgetting to switch it off.
Somewhere else now. Bless you. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you all for your contributions, particularly to David and Harvey. Thank you so much. I so enjoyed meeting you all yesterday, and look forward to seeing you all next month, because that's a monthly meeting. And David, maybe you want to share the information. The new website, we're slowly beginning to understand how to turn it into a community. We'll get there in the end, so that you'll all eventually be able to communicate with each other with a great deal more ease than you can at the moment. But that will happen very shortly. In the meantime, I just want to say thank you again to everybody. Inspiring. I love the way that all kinds of connections are being made. It's just absolutely brilliant. So Richard, if you wouldn't mind sending me a note about what has actually happened in Manchester, I'd be very, very grateful. Thank you all. Bless you. I really appreciate it. And let's keep fighting the good fight. And
Nigel,
grab that bottle of Malbec. Take care.